Lots to discuss with this gent. His MMQB column, latest is just as much must-read material as he always writes. My longtime friend from NFL Network as well, SI's Albert Breer back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Albert?
I'm good. How you doing, Rich? How's the new environment, I guess?
You know what?
Right?
It's everything. I'm just looking around. Everything's fine. It's just interesting. Chris Brockman is wearing the number 1 of Tony Franklin back in the day for the New England Patriots. All of a sudden, he's such a big fan of the number 1 from the Patriots jersey, Albert. It's amazing.
You a big fan? You a big fan of the number 1 too? Like a certain quarterback that might be wearing number 1?
I couldn't be more excited. I mean, we've been giving teams the number 1 for a long time, Albert. So
my word.
It's good to finally have a great number 1 on the roster.
Well, we got a number 1 that I think all of us can root for right now, right, Rich?
Well, you know what? Who is that a reference to the guy who wears number 1 at The Ohio State University who's trying to fight for Big Ten football to somehow return?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think this would give you a chance to be a fan of Justin Fields, even if it's only temporary.
Well, let's start here first, Albert, because obviously the Big Ten and the Pac-12 saying we'll see you in January significantly affects, at the very least, and when we're talking professional football, the non-playing talent evaluation portion of the NFL calendar. So the Big Ten and the Pac-12, as well as whatever the SEC, Big 12, and ACC decide what to do, impacts the NFL and will be on your radar screen and everybody else in the NFL information business. What are you hearing right now? Is this a possibility that what Justin Fields is doing? By the way, Michigan Wolverine parents apparently created a Twitter page today at Wolverine Family just to post a letter that they are demanding a sit-down virtually with Kevin Warren of the Big Ten, the commissioner, as well as the school president of Michigan. They want answers about what they base their decision on. Is there any there here?
Well, I think it's interesting at the very least. You know, I haven't talked to some people at those schools. It sure sounds like the problem isn't so much with the decision itself as it is with the lack of communication and the lack of reasoning. And, you know, they really felt like, I guess the best way you can put it is Charlie Brown with Lucy pulling the football away with the way the schedule came out last week, or I guess 2 weeks ago now, just 5-6 days in front of the season getting canceled. And so, I think you've seen it from Ohio State parents, from Penn State parents, from Iowa parents, Nebraska parents, Michigan parents. I think those 5 schools are the ones right now. They just want answers. They want, reason why the Big Ten can't go forward and the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12 can. And there's a lot on the line for a lot of these kids, and it's not just the kids who are going to the NFL. It's, the fifth-year seniors, the guys who may never play football again. And I think really that's what the biggest thing I think they want is to know that their kids were a priority in this decision, and that it wasn't just about liability. And I think above all else, they want to know that all the options to play the season in the fall were exhausted before this move was made, because I know that there's a lot of skepticism in those schools about that part of it. They felt like there was more that could have been done to try to get the season played the fall.
Well, I guess, with news coming out about testing, the new saliva test that the NBA had been using with Yale, and it got FDA approval this past week, and it's been talked about either it's a game changer or a game modifier, depending on how I guess well-versed you are on all of this, and that I guess the conversation is that what the Big Ten and the Pac-12 did was premature, unless you read up about the apparent health report that the school presidents got. The Pac-12 presidents essentially told Pete Thamel that it was over. It was open and shut what they heard. Yeah. So what are you hearing on that front?
Well, I'll tell you what, Rich. Before all of this, before the last 6 months, I had no idea doctors disagree with each other as much as they do.
Right.
Like, it is unbelievable, like how massive the disagreement can be. I can just tell you, and I'm not a college football reporter. I know a lot of people in that level of the game, but I don't cover it day to day like somebody like Pete does. What I can tell you is, at the NFL level, it's, the way that they're combating it is through, I like the constant testing, of course, and the daily testing is an important piece of it, and then following up with heart scans, with EKGs, with echoes, with all that sort of stuff. So if there is a problem, they'll catch it really, really, really quickly. And I think part of the issue at the college level has been one of resources. Like, your Michigan or Ohio State or your Clemson or your Alabama can afford to put the resources behind it to create something close, not maybe exactly like, but something close to what the NFL is doing. Whereas, can, say, a Minnesota do that? Can, say, a Rutgers do that? Can a Pitt do that? Can a Mississippi State do that? I think that's sort of, been part of the issue at the college level. And the thing about this saliva test that is, I think, really important, it's how quick the result gets turned around. It's instant, right? And then B, how cheap it is. And I've seen numbers where it's like $4 or $5 a test. And so I think the accessibility and the ability to constantly test athletes, that's why this is a game changer. Because if you're testing guys more consistently, and if you can do it because it's a little cheaper and it's more accessible, well, then that changes everything. Because that means, if you're doing it every day, you're going to catch it before you put a kid who has this heart condition out on the field. And I will say this, Rich, my wife is a cardiac nurse.
Yep.
This is a very serious condition. Myocarditis is a very serious condition. It's not to be taken lightly. So I think the risk would be, and it's not something you don't need a pre-existing condition to get it. Like it can, like COVID can. It's been proven COVID can lead to this condition. You don't need something pre-existing for it to happen. I think the key is as is the case with a lot of other things that pop up, with doctors who deal with football players, the key is catching it instantly. And if you can catch it instantly, that mitigates a lot of the problem.
Albert Breer is the MMQB here on the Rich Eisen Show. A couple more COVID-related questions for you. First one, again, just to tie up this college NFL situation, for the lack of a better phrase, is what are the conversations within the NFL offices right now about moving the combine and moving the draft to at least accommodate all these kids that might play in January, February, and March, and also if the entire college football community comes to that conclusion eventually.
Right. So the first thing you want to remember, the NFL wants to help college football. College football is great for the NFL. Three real reasons for that. Number one, it's a free minor league. And the expense of a minor league, the difficulty in monetizing a minor league, the NFL doesn't want any part of that. So the system they have where the players get like world-class level coaching, get developed for 3 years, and get delivered to them at 21, 22 years old, they don't want to mess with that. Number two, the way that the players are marketed. Like Johnny Manziel and Tim Tebow, say what you will about guys like that, those guys were stars when they got to the NFL. And that brings me to the third point, which is, the college football really is the foundation for the biggest event in the NFL's offseason calendar, the draft. If college football wasn't so popular, then the draft wouldn't have the sort of motor that it does with the public. And so, college football is great for the NFL. The NFL wants to help college football. And so I think they're willing to go to a certain distance to try and help them. I know some people have been in touch with some guys at the NFL office, and I would tell you that the people in college football that are working on this, I know there's some individual coaches in the Big Ten that are working on this too. They're working on a plan that would work for everybody if they can't play in the fall. So, that could be a January, February schedule playing in dome stadiums with the NFL Combine moved back and the NFL Draft moved back to accommodate those kids. So those kids wouldn't have to choose between going to the Combine or going to their pro day and playing through their season. And so I can tell you the NFL is amenable to trying to work with college football to get a season in and try to do what's best for all the athletes.
And then there's the question about protocols in the NFL. And what happens if somebody tests positive or two, right? Let's just say something that has struck or stricken the Miami Marlins and the St. Louis Cardinals happens in the NFL. What is the plan for that right now, Albert?
So the one thing they've talked about is kind of forming a committee that would report to Roger Goodell of people who maybe aren't connected with teams. So obviously, you take any competitive issues out of it. That would make those sorts of decisions. I can tell you, like, a lot of teams wanted hard and fast, wanted some hard and fast standards. Like, okay, like we have X number of players that get it, that constitutes an outbreak, and X number of players get it, that, necessitates a forfeiture. Or this percentage of a position group goes down. Here's the protocol for how you go through that. That's what NFL teams were really looking for ahead of training camp, and they didn't get it. And my sense is one of the reasons why is so much has changed over the last 6, 7, 8 weeks. I can't speak for you, Rich, but I thought at the beginning of June we'd be in a much better spot than we are, nationwide with the virus.
No doubt.
So I think there's like an acknowledgement there that things are going to keep changing, and what makes sense as far as a hard and fast rule in the middle of August might not make sense in the middle of October. So I do know the one thing that they have discussed, I think this is probably the likely route they go, is try to find a way to come up with a committee, and whether it's 6 people, 8 people, 10 people, put some medical people on there, put some people who have some experience with teams on there, where that committee would work with Roger to be sort of that emergency, that group that deals with the emergency situations where if you do have an outbreak right before a game, there are some people that you go to that'll sort of make the big hard decisions on what to do about it.
So basically, like, we'll form a committee to deal with the hard decisions when we need to, but right now there's no going into the season. X number of players here, this is what we're going to happen. We're going to cancel the game. And there's just no hard and fast rule, is essentially what you're saying right now.
Right now, that could change over the next few weeks. Like I said, this thing's been changing so fast.
It's crazy, man.
I think, like the NFL, like that. But that's the thing is, like, and the way these, a ton of these people, Rich. The way they want it. They want to know the rules beforehand. You know what I mean? Like they want to know. Like, okay, like, so if this is what it is, this is what it is, and we'll deal with that. And I just think that, things have changed so quickly and things have evolved over the last few months to the point where I do think the NFL wants to maintain some level of flexibility. So I'm not saying they couldn't put in something. They still have, 3 weeks before we're even into the practices towards week one, towards that game week. But as of right now, it feels to me at least like they may be leaning more towards that committee approach.
And have you heard of any teams that have basically said, "Hey, we're anybody that goes out at night has to face the music within our 4 walls"? Do you know anybody that's basically, or have all coaches kind of given the speech that coaches give to players before they go on bye weeks, saying, "Don't do anything that." Stupid, essentially?
Right.
Have you heard that?
Yeah, I know that they've used examples from other sports. I think what happened in Oklahoma was probably a good example too, right? Like if you look at, and I think Lincoln Riley's done as good a job as anybody, but he gave the players a week off,
Right.
And they come back and they'd had 0 positive tests. I think they had a round of tests where they tested 150 people, had 0 positives. And they come back from that week off, and all of a sudden they've got 9 positives, and that's a program, again, that has done, I think, just about everything right when it comes to this. That sort of illustrates the risk out there. Obviously, you get the example of the Marlins. Everybody saw Sean McVay use that on Hard Knocks last week. And I do know that the message from every coach I've talked to at the beginning of camp was, listen, whoever is the most responsible team is going to be one of the teams that's standing at the end. And we have a chance to give ourselves a competitive advantage here if we're responsible about it. And so I think everybody has gotten that message and had that drilled home over and over and over again over the first couple of weeks of camp. There is a part of this, Rich, though, that, is going to be sort of variable that they can't control, which is what happens when these kids go back to school in a couple of weeks. What happens when people's wives go back to work? There is a piece of this, of course, that I don't think anybody is going to be able to control, that it's just going to be sort of introduced as, again, kids start going back to school, people start going back to work because they're not in a bubble.
All right, so I got time for one football question. We might as well bring it full circle. Cam Newton's a starter, right, in New England? I mean, the whole conversation about that he's a hardworking kid, and we're hearing everything out of New England about how Stidham was this and Hoyer's that. It's Cam's gig, right? I mean, this is it. We're gonna see Cam out there week one. It's gonna be Belichick hooking up with Cam as a post Tom Brady hors d'oeuvre for us to all feast on all year long, right?
Yeah, and I'll give you an interesting anecdote from 2011. I had a couple people I was talking to who used to work there, who were there in 2011, who talked about Bill's message coming out of the lockout. And because of like the weirdness of that season and the lack of a ramp up, what Bill kept saying to the guys, and they went to the Super Bowl that year, was you don't want to be the team that's going to be, that's not going to be properly conditioned, because that team is going to get run over, right? And when the real games start. Well, what better way to deal with a dynamic like that than to throw a 270-pound quarterback at people? I thought it was a really interesting way to look at it. I think just for the circumstance of this year, I think Cam is in a lot of ways perfect for the Patriots. No one knows what they're going to be running offensively at you. They're going to have the ability to be creative. There's some simple stuff they can put in that guys are going to be able to adapt to really quickly. And so I think, Bill signing Cam was very much with 2020 in mind, knowing that he might be the ideal quarterback for these circumstances. And what the upshot of it is, Rich? If he is who he was 3 or 4 years ago, well, then you get to re-sign him, and maybe you have your Tom Brady replacement. So good for 2020, and also with potential to be good for more than that.
So exciting, Albert. It really is.
Oh yeah.
So I'll leave you with a sports talk radio question. Who's got the biggest chip on his shoulder? Is it Brady or Cam?
Oh, great question. Great question.
How about Bill wanting to show everybody that he could win without Tom, and that it wasn't just Tom? How about that for an answer? If you want to get the sports radio,
sure.
Going.
I mean, you could throw Bill in there too. He'll never admit that there's a shoulder or a chip or a chip on his shoulder or a potato chip or a poker chip. There's no chips. I mean, not even in his Subway sandwiches that he's hawking.
I think
soon.
Bill. He'll never admit this, but I think Bill Belichick will be paying special attention to the NFC South standings this fall. I'll put it that way.
Isn't it great? This is so great. I've been asked. I don't know the answer to this question, and I very, very rarely ask questions I don't really know the answer to. I've just been Don Bowie, my EP, just got in my ear. Say, ask him about his Instagram. Oh, there it is, your Instagram photo. Very nice, your profile avatar. Look at you looking all Nantucket tanned and rested, sitting in our guest chair, all smiley, Albert. Look at that.
Every time I come in studio, I've just got an electric tan going on.
You do. Very George Hamilton.
Yeah. You guys have given me a good opportunity to get
the lighting,
to get the best side of me in my avatar.
Look at that lighting. Next time, we just got to make sure that we just twist the mug a little bit more, because our show logo is somewhat obscured, but we'll just handle it. We'll handle it. Thank you, though.
I will say this, though, Rich. I think maybe the best picture I ever took, just as far as tanning goes and everything else, may have been with you, but not in that studio, actually on island.
It was in Nantucket where we watched, I forget, was it France versus Croatia? Was that the World Cup match we watched?
Something like that, yeah. It was at the gazebo. That's
it was at the gazebo on the Long Wharf there in the great city of Nantucket.
I got a great picture of me and Albert at the DirecTV party in Phoenix one year.
I bet you're very good.
Don't show anybody that.
Yeah.
By the way, this is not usually a before I hit you with this out the door, but I will do it nonetheless in the few moments we have remaining. Tell me about Jason Wright, the new team president of the Washington football team.
Yeah, I mean, McKinsey's obviously been, a firm that the NFL's been close with. You guys may know Brittany Boland, who's been groomed to sort of take Pat Boland's old chair as the principal owner of the Broncos. She went through the program there, and so he's somebody the NFL had an eye on for a while. And I think what's really interesting about it, obviously, is the diversity end of it, which is great. That we have somebody, in a team president role as caller for the first time. I also think the fact that he's young is going to be really interesting. He's 38 years old. He played in the league, and the team is going through this just massive rebrand. And so, I think having somebody with that sort of fresh perspective and a different outlook on things is going to be really, really good. And then, I've asked around a little this morning. It does sound like when he was playing in the league, I think people knew that guy over there, he's got something coming after he's done playing that's probably going to be a lot better than what he's doing right now, which, obviously has wound up being the case.
Yeah, 7 years in the league, and now the first person of color to be a team president in the National Football League, and for the Washington football team to boot. Albert, thank you for the time. Appreciate it. Good to chat with you. Let's chat with you real soon. Best to your wife and your family.
You too, Rich. And if you want me to send you that Justin Fields jersey, I'll get it in the mail right away.
You know what?
Send it anyway.
You know what?
Yeah,
send it.
Send it.
I think I have too many Ohio State trinkets around here from past Novembers, paying things off. But I will accept anything from you, Albert, especially phone calls these days. Thanks for the call, brother.
I'll be right on it. All right, Rich.
You got it. That's Albert Breer.
See you, bud.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.